You are listening to the Mad Music Marketing Minutes podcast with your host, Billy Gryzak. Brought to you by MusicMarketingMind.com. Personal music career support services. The show starts in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right, well, here we are once again. You pressed play. You downloaded the show known as the Mad Music Marketing Minutes. I am your music marketing mind, Billy Gryzak, and I am darn glad that you're here today, especially because we have someone who I consider a friend, but also a mentor, an inspiration, somebody that really kind of got me going down the path of taking my love and my passion for marketing, music, and learning more about communication with my audience and helping people and brought it to a new level and made it more than just a hobby. So I'm really excited today. We have the one, the only, the Godfather. Right, the Godfather of music marketing. I hear him chuckling in the background. Bob Baker. Bob, how you doing today?
Billy, I am doing wonderful. Thanks for doing this. This is kind of a switch for us because I've interviewed you on my podcast, and I know we've interacted in many ways. But this is the first time you're interviewing me, and so I love it when the tables are turned.
Well, I hope I do a good job because pretty much I learned everything I know from you. So I hope I get a passing grade today.
You do fine. Like I appreciate the kind words, but I think a lot of people, I mean, your existing listeners or any new people that I bring to you, they'll quickly find out that you are the living epitome of the type of artist that I cater to and that I encourage people to become. Because you live this stuff, and I know you're getting to the point where you could even teach it, and because you've been at it for 20 years or 30 years or whatever, however long you've been making a living.
30 plus years, but we're not here to talk about me today. In fact, tell the listeners, tell everybody who you really are, what you do, and let's get to know Bob a little bit.
Sure. Where I know you've been at this for 20 or 30 years. I have good 20, 25. I've been at this author, teacher, speaker thing. But basically, I started off as a musician. I've been playing guitar, playing in rock bands, been a singer, songwriter since my teens. That goes back to the 70s, by the way, for those of you who are keeping track. And then I also had an interest in the written word and expressing myself through language. Ever since I was a kid, too. And in my mid to late 20s, back in the late 80s, I started publishing this local music newspaper here in St. Louis. And I sort of became a journalist of my own making. It's kind of interesting looking back at it now. There's a lot of this talk about creating a platform for yourself online. I know that's a big word in the or buzzword in the author and the book publishing community about establishing a platform. That's basically where you have you have a presence or you have some way to reach an audience. And I guess there's different phrases for that in the music world. But I guess I've been building my own platform even long before the internet days. Instead of just waiting and begging other newspapers and in magazines or whatever to run my articles, I said, well, heck, I don't want to go through the rejection and have to get permission and all that. So I just created my own newspaper, actual print newspaper, back in the late 80s and did that for 10 years. Learned a lot about being sort of a journalist and being on the receiving end of a lot of pitches, and stuff from bands and artists at all levels. But it was during that time that I started writing columns because I was a curious musician and I had this great advantage of being able to interview different people for my newspaper. And so I would pick their brains. I said, how did you get people to come out to the show? How did you do this? How did you achieve that? What steps did you take? And I started weaving them into columns that I wrote, started offering local workshops, and I would moderate panels and so on. And so that was like early 90s. That was the early beginnings of my dipping my toe into this sort of music education thing. And then that led to books and a lot of cool things over the years. Tons of books, online courses, audio programs. I ran a course for Berklee College of Music for 5 years. And so I just kind of live a life of being immersed in this music and marketing thing. Also have a lot of resources for authors and now creative entrepreneurs of all types, too. So I'm kind of expanding my audience and who I serve. But that's sort of a quick overview of what I do.
Yeah, it's a shame you don't, do too much.
I know I've been a little bit of a slacker over the years.
Well,
right?
I first became aware of you. I went to my local music store, and I'm actually reaching over to my bookshelf right now, where I have my original copy. Here it is, of Guerrilla Music Marketing, the Guerrilla Music Marketing Handbook, Your Guide to Independent Music Success. And by the way, I don't think I ever told you, but when I bought it, it had Mel Bay stickers all over it. Did I ever tell you that?
No, you didn't. But there was a period of time where Mel Bay distributed the book to retail, so you got one of those. So you actually bought it in a real bricks and mortar store
in the local music store in the area where they sold like instructional videos and books and things like that. And I mean, I saw it, and honestly, I mean, that was totally changed my world. This copy is copyright 1996-2004.
Oh, wow, really 96? Oh, wow.
Yeah, so, and I guess, but anyway, so that's how I originally heard of you, and I bought this book, and I read it over and over. In fact, I recommended it to dozens of my friends who also did buy copies. It's really cool. And then I remember I was watching a movie. You know this movie.
I do.
And there's a girl that became quite famous in this movie with Jack Black, and she went on to be in a movie called iCarly, a show called iCarly, and she was carrying your darn book around in the movie called, what's the movie called, Bob?
It's called The School of Rock. I know it well. Yeah, and an early version of the book, got used in the movie, and that actress's name is Miranda Cosgrove, who I didn't really know much about her at the time, but yeah, she's gone on to be kind of a Disney star or something,
Sure
or Nickelodeon or something.
Yeah, she does it all. I mean, she had a TV show, and she's a singer. She's like, maybe she read your book, Bob, and that's why she's so famous.
Who knows? Yeah, but in the movie, Jack Black picked her character because she couldn't sing, whatever.
Right.
So Jack Black was his fake teacher, a substitute teacher, and he wanted to enter this rock band competition, but all of his his rocker buddies didn't want to play with him, so he tried to get a group of sixth graders or whatever to be his band, and so and she became the manager, and so I guess that they needed a way to visually illustrate that she was learning how to be the music business. And I think it's because I like to design my book covers where the title is really large and bold, and you can see it even when it's just like a thumbnail on Amazon, And I think that was one of the reasons that it probably got picked, because you could read the title of it even in a classroom setting like that. So
yeah, well, that's just brilliant. I mean, the fact that your book says right there at the top, and the biggest font in the world, Guerrilla Music Marketing Handbook, and in smaller font down about by Bob Baker.
Yeah.
and in one of your classes, I don't know if we'll hopefully we'll get into it, but you also offer online classes and workshops, and which I'm a student. I frequent your classes and workshops because even though I've been doing this for a while, you got to keep learning, or if you're not learning, you're dying, in my opinion. So I'm always trying to learn something new, and even if it's things I've heard before, sometimes the repetition really helps,
Absolutely.
And the thing that is so brilliant is that you got to put the headline first. Nobody really cares so much about the author or the artist or the band at first. They want to see something that sounds really interesting, and then once they buy it and get to know you, then they'll start looking for the name of the artist or the author. Don't you think, Bob?
Right, because at first people aren't looking for you. They don't know of you. They don't even know that you exist. But they are. But so I always like to have artists think of people that are predisposed to like you. And I love that word predisposed, because what it means is there's something about them that makes them more likely than not to enjoy what you do. And so that could be their age, it could be their gender, it could be some life experience that they've had. And if you kind of know who those people are, you have to put out what used to be called link bait, but you put things out online that will attract those type of people who are looking for either other artists similar to you, or they're looking for a particular topic or style. And in the normal process of them being online and seeking out stuff that interests them, they discover you, and then hopefully they enjoy you so much that they'll start recommending you to friends. But yeah, this title thing, I mean, it works in YouTube videos, the titles, blog post titles, email subject lines. Yeah, the way you word things is really, really is a big factor in whether people will click on it or open it or watch it or whatever. And so, good point there, sir.
Really, really good point. And it's funny. I thought this was something I made up on my own, but here I am looking at a book that you wrote, 20 years ago, and it's like, darn it, you beat me to it again, Bob.
I'm sorry.
we think so much alike. It's just it scares me to death. It really does. Anyway, well, I'll tell you what. But while I calm down here, we're just going to take a second. We're going to break for a second here, and we'd like to hear our message today from our sponsor, Only Sky Artists. And Neil, go ahead and take it away.
Thanks, Billy. Hey, when sending emails to your fans, write them from a person. Don't use words like he, she, or we when describing yourself or your band. You're not some behemoth corporation. You're one person. Write emails from one person to one person. Say things like, I'm playing the show on Saturday, or download my album. If you're in a band, pick one member to write the email. You see, people connect with people, not the anonymous we. Hey, this tip was brought to you by Only Sky Artists, the creators of Music Fan Attractor. To get more great tips like this, head on over to onlyskyartists.com/tips. There you can download a free report to discover the 7 pitfalls musicians fall victim to when marketing their music online. That's onlyskyartists.com/tips. And now back to Billy.
All right, thanks, Neil. That was cool, as always. All right, anyway, Bob, we were on break there, and we were just talking a little bit about what are some of the most important things artists can do for their career? And I think you and I both agree that one of the things you can do no matter what you do, you need to do it, and you need to keep doing it, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so many different directions that we could go with this, but part of it is the more content that you put out there. I know, again, as you mentioned, you've taken a lot of my online courses, and so I know we've interacted a lot on these live conference calls that I have during these courses, and so I know this is something that you, and having this observe you too, you are a content factory, and so yeah, for musicians that content is quite often songs, so it's musical, but it's also video clips, so you just relaying something of interest to your fans. It could be things that you write about. It could be images that you create. It's also or spoken word audio podcasts in addition to your recorded music, and so but yeah, the more stuff you put out there, the more of this link bait that I mentioned earlier that is on the internet sprinkled around, the more just the accumulation of that stuff over time is what little by little people will start to find you. And once they connect with you, then you got to build that relationship with them and connect with them a little bit more personally. But yeah, so a volume of content and then consistency over time is really crucial. Absolutely.
So when you say consistency, what are we talking about here exactly?
Well, yeah, we're talking about, so it's really easy to get, like, then there's an album, like you put out a new album and there's a lot of excitement about it, and you're really, you spend a month or two or whatever, promoting the CD release party, or there's some big event, or you got, you just, there's times when we're really excited about a new project. It's kind of like the beginning of a relationship, and everything's wonderful, and then but that honeymoon phase eventually will end, and sometimes people will just fade away. Seth Godin, who I know you're a big fan of Seth, he has a book called the Dip. It's a really short book, but it's about that, like knowing when to stick and when to quit, and so the dip is that part that after the initial enthusiasm wears off, how do you keep going? And how do you motivate yourself? And you got to decide, is it worth to keep going? But most people don't reach success until they continue to do the work, even though they're not seeing huge results. They continue to put stuff out there on a regular, consistent basis. And then they will hopefully break through that sort of frustration when it doesn't seem like you're getting the results that you want. And eventually a number of people will start to recognize you. And then, your notoriety grows slowly but surely. And then you come out on the other side higher than you were. But getting through that dip is really the thing that separates, well, the amateurs from the professionals. I just happened to have listened to a podcast this morning. I drop my daughter's with me once a week, and I drop her off at high school, and so I have a little bit of a drive, and I like to listen to podcasts. And I just this morning was listening to I don't know if you've ever heard of Amy Porterfield.
Oh, yeah.
Billy, okay, yeah, she's like a social media. She used to work with Tony Robbins, and now she's like a social media and Facebook expert. And she's a great podcast. And she interviewed Marie Forleo. Do you know who she is?
No, who's that?
So she's like another mover and shaker. She's really made great in the social media and kind of business entrepreneurial world. And she kind of caters more to women, but still. But there's this whole business space that's out there. But she has a regular like Marie TV. A thing that she puts out consistently every week. She's really made good use of YouTube videos, but she's at the stage where she's been on Oprah and she's hangs out with Richard Branson and all this stuff. She's pretty high profile now. But anyway, so Amy was interviewing Marie this morning, and she basically talked about. She was referencing Stephen Pressfield's books. The one is The War of Art, and the other one, a follow-up book to that, was called Turning Pro. And she was basically saying, you have to ask yourself, are you an amateur or are you a professional? And there are differences to that. And it really and usually I don't have this kind of talk. I'm usually like very encouraging and very inspiring in all that. And I still like the thing that I am. But at some point, you got to realize, are you in hobby mode, with your career? There's nothing wrong with that. If you just want to do music part-time and you dabble in it and you do what you can. But I think a lot of people have mixed modes. Like in their heads, they think, I want to be a rock star. But in their actions, they're in hobby or amateur mode, just kind of dabbling. But if you really want to make it with music in a big scale, you almost have to sort of start thinking of yourself like an Olympic athlete, and training and consistency and putting in the effort, over and take it seriously. And just a lot of people aren't cut out to do that. Your thoughts, sir?
Yeah, I totally agree. In fact, there's a lot of people out there with, for lack of a better word, with like chips on their shoulder. Because they can't get through the filters to make it. But when, in fact, the biggest filter that everyone has is their own filter. You know what I'm saying, Bob?
Oh, sure. Mindset and
yeah. And even being a little bit delusional sometimes, not really knowing where you stand. I'll tell you, I might be committing suicide here to lose all my listeners right now, but I had a conversation with David Hooper one time when I was down in Asheville, who's another music marketing member of the family, guru, whatever there.
Old friend of mine, too.
Yeah, great guy. And I said, sometimes I would just like to write a book or say something, write a book or just put out there and say, do you suck? That's the name of the album. That's the name of the book. It's like, and it's like, like a checklist to find out whether or not what you're doing is up to par, whether it's creatively, musically, vocally, or socially, or marketing, because some people just don't know, and people are afraid to tell you whether or not you're doing it right. You know what I'm saying? It's almost like how they always say, like, there's no book on parenting. Okay, right. I get that, but Bob, there's a billion books on music marketing, but they're not reading them or something. I don't know. I don't get it,
Right, yeah, and there's so many aspects. That's why I wrote a blog post a few years ago called The New Gatekeepers, and basically was talking about how in the days of old, 10, 15 years ago, to make it in music or anything else, in books or film or whatever, you had to get the approval of someone at some corporate entity or somebody that had financial backing. And so it was this small group of people. They were like editors and A&R people and what do you call it? I don't know. Yeah, they were the people that decided who was worthy of wider exposure, and you had to get there, and all the effort was put on getting the attention of this gatekeeper so that you could, reach a wider audience. So now, of course, those walls are broken down. Everybody has access to the internet, to the technologies to create stuff pretty affordably, and so now, but that doesn't mean that everyone, like people have used this phrase, there's a level playing field.
Right.
And I guess everyone has access to the playing field, but not everyone plays the game the same way. And so the new gatekeeper is embracing the workload, is taking on the challenges of having to do it yourself at first. It's balancing having the talent and working on the songs and the live show in the case of musicians, while also getting, on friendly terms with social media. And so some of the, and people, so as I've interviewed a lot of the I guess I consider the ideal or the epitome, like people like you. And I've interviewed a bunch of them over the years because they sort of are attracted to my message. And when I find somebody who's really living it, I will try to interview them and show, hey, look, somebody is doing this, but they embrace it all. They just, their frustrations, sure, it doesn't come easy all the time, but they do what they have to do. They learn the video, they learn, as opposed to just complaining about it. And so I guess it's like your mission has to be bigger than those little hurdles that you encounter along the way.
Yeah, I mean, I hear it all the time. I hear, can you help me? Can you do this for me? I'm looking for somebody to come and take me to the next level. I want that record deal. I just spoke. In fact, the podcast that launched today, the day we're talking, was with Brian Mazzaferri from I Fight Dragons.
Well, yeah, he's an old, he's also got the Guerrilla book years ago, and I was on a panel with him at NAMM a few years back, and so I know Brian.
Right,
too.
and then they were the indie band, living the dream, building their fan base. Then they got the record deal, and they got the record deal with Atlantic Records, and then they lost the record deal, and then they're back to being indie, and going back to being indie actually seems to have been a blessing for the band, because be careful what you wish for, folks. If you want somebody to come down and do these things, well, suddenly, you don't have control of your career anymore either,
Mm-hmm.
So it's a double-edged sword. You're in control of your career, but you got to do the work. You know
right.
what I mean?
And so I mentioned this newspaper that I published for 10 years, and at its heyday, like in the early 90s, not only in St. Louis, where I live, where my newspaper was, but I think across the country, it was like every band, there were so many hot cities, and even in St. Louis, there were like a dozen bands that were within a few year period, because I was covering them all at the time. They got signed from everything, anywhere from like really substantial indie labels to Atlantic and Capitol and all this stuff.
Wow.
And a couple of them ended up sticking with it and doing well. But most of them ended up getting frustrated, getting dropped, really being bitter. And so, that chase for that almighty, record deal, is not all that's cut out to be. However, I will say, I have this new interview series called The Creative Entrepreneur, where I interview people from a vast, not only musicians, but authors and visual artists and even actors and all this stuff. But I did interview, it's not posted yet, but probably by the time this podcast airs, it'll be on. I interviewed Derek Sivers, who founded CD Baby. And so, and he's an old friend too. But he has an interesting take on it. He does think that there can be value with teaming up with a corporate entity. Like his philosophy is, well, heck, if you can't get a record deal, and even if they rip you off for one album or however many songs, but if they can get you into airplay and into like the public consciousness, he actually said you can then, as long as you can get out of your contract, I guess, then you can just milk that and actually build a career on top of the exposure that they gave you. So he has a sort of a contrarian view, or a different view on that. But I still think these days, you have choices. You can stay in. I mean, the main thing is to start off indie. A record label or a corporate entity is not going to be interested in you until you got something to work with, and so you have to get up to speed on your own. And then once you build your indie career and you got traction, then you have choices. You can stay indie. Like I interviewed two different duos a couple of years back. One was Carmen, and the other one was Pomplamoose. And if you're not, Google them if you're not sure who they are. But they both used YouTube cover songs to initially get a lot of attention as indie acts. And Carmen decided to go the major label route. They got they got courted by all sorts of labels and ended up going with Epic, and they've had Billboard, top 10 hits, and they've been on Saturday Night Live and all this stuff since then, and have done pretty well. I haven't talked to them to see if they really are enjoying the experience, but they got the notoriety that way. Pomplamoose, on the other hand, also got fielded lots of offers, but they decided to stay indie because the numbers didn't. They thought they could do a lot better staying indie. So the cool thing is you have choices. There's not just one size fits all these days.
And that's really the bottom line there is. kind of sort of knowing where you want to go, maybe having a destination. I don't know, setting goals, maybe.
Yeah, well, that's certainly important. Yeah, in fact, we the module that we just did of the I have of the Guerrilla Music Marketing Masterclass, which you are well aware, we just finished here. There was a lesson there on goal setting, so we had a lot of discussions about that. So my thing is, yeah, it's really important to have goals. It's really important to have a specific vision that you work through and or you're working towards, because having a specific goal leads to you taking specific actions. However, you can't be too attached to the goal because you have to be open to unexpected opportunities that come up, and you really don't know whether a path is the right one for you until you start interacting with the world, and then you gauge the feedback, and that'll indicate, oh yeah, I should continue to do this, or oh, here's a new opportunity I never saw. I just posted a graphic on Facebook, I think it was yesterday, where it was on the left side it said success, and it said, here's what people think it is, and there's like a straight line from point A to point B, and then on the right side it says, but here's how it actually works in real life. There's a bunch of squiggly lines that went zigzagged all around.
I reposted and shared that thing all over the place.
Right. And so that's a good indication of, yeah, you head off. It's important to have a destination, but you will get rerouted many times along the way and hopefully end up in a place that's even better than you originally envisioned.
I'll tell you one of the things that really got me in the direction that I've headed in. There was an interview with Chris Squire, the bass player from Yes. And do you remember Circus Magazine, Bob?
I do, yeah. Wow, I haven't thought of that in a long time.
Circus Magazine was showing our age here. Anyway, it was in the 70s. I was reading this interview with Chris Squire from Yes, and he said you have to set your goals really high, like ridiculously high. And, if you want to go to the moon, you set your sights for the stars, because if you just set your goal for the moon, you might not make it to the moon. You know what I mean? But if you set for Mars or Saturn, and let's say you only make it to the moon, well, guess what? Look at what you've accomplished. You made it to the moon, man, which was your original intention, So I think it's always good to set your goals as high as possible, but realize that you might not get there. But when you set them so high, that's what I've always done. For me, it seems to work out great because I know that I'm shooting as high as I can, and anything less than that, I'm still a success. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess the bigger the goal is, the more you've got to live up to it. Again, you try to avoid that mixed mode thing that I talked about earlier, where there's some people that talk about, I'm going to be a superstar and all this stuff. But again, their actions aren't, living up to it. I also think it's good to, have a big picture vision, a long-term vision, like shoot for the stars or Mars or whatever. But most of the real work happens in the short term, like this week, this month. To me, like the 30 to 90 day period is like that sweet spot of getting the real detailed action done. It's kind of hard to predict, what you're going to be doing a year from now, or what steps you're going to be taking then. So it's like, have a big vision in the distance, but then don't avoid but then get busy with the nitty gritty in the here and now. There's a huge disparity between where you are now and where that vision is. And I guess the thing is, you got to slowly close the gap.
and one of the things that you teach in your classes that is invaluable, it's a little thing, and if everybody would do this, they would see giant changes. It's doing 3 little things every day that move towards your goal. And just explain that philosophy, because that's kind of what I was alluding to when I said, being consistent and doing things consistently and not stopping. And that might be a great place to maybe wrap it up, as we'll talk about that a little bit, okay?
Sure, yeah. I referred to it more recently as the power of 3, but there's something powerful about the number 3. And there's also, I've often said that the best, surest route to success is to chip away at it. And that's not sexy, and it's not like, everybody wants to make the big, wants the big splash, and they want to come out all guns blazing and all that stuff, and that's cool. And you should take advantage of your enthusiasm while you have it. But again, true success is grinding it out little by little over time, where over the course of a week or a month, it might not seem like you're making progress, but over the course of 6 months, a year, you look back of doing something little by little, and you go, wow. And that's exactly how I built my career as an author. There was no, even having the book in the movie, The School of Rock. I mean, a lot of people thought, oh boy, I bet you really took off then. And no, I really didn't, because when you think about it, it just flashed by on the screen. Who's going to really pay attention to a book title? I got probably more mileage out of it by telling people that it was in the book and putting it on the cover of the subsequent editions, as seen in the movie. But my secret to success is, man, week after week, posting a blog post, writing another article, recording another podcast, so as I've been on the internet probably like you since the mid 90s. And so originally it was primarily a text-based medium, and then MP3s and stuff, and then audio became more and more friendly. So I've started a podcast, and then there's video, YouTube and video, and then internet speeds, increased. Then I added video content. And then photos and images are really a big thing that I'm actually getting into more recently. So yeah, every day or every week I'm creating something and putting it out there, and that's what you have to do as a musician. It could be, and you have to figure out what your communication strength is. It could be a song a week. If you're a good writer of the written word, you should blog often on topics related to your music and of interest to you. But you got to do it consistently over time, little by little. Slow and steady wins the race, I guess. Again, it's not sexy, but it's really the truth for many people.
Absolutely. Okay, well, we pretty much reached our time limit here today. But before we go, can you tell us where we can find you, where we can reach you, if anybody wants to contact you or is interested in any of your courses, classes, online materials, books? Go ahead, shameless plug time.
Sure. So the portal to all things Bob Baker related is bob-baker.com. So bob-baker.com. My music specific website is thebuzzfactor.com. If you're interested in publishing books or becoming an indie author, fulltimeauthor.com. And then I have this new interview series called The Creative Entrepreneur, which you can journey to full-time status.
Hold on, we lost you. I lost you right at and we have the creative entrepreneur. You want to pick it up from there?
Sure.
Okay, go ahead.
And I've got this new interview series that I mentioned called The Creative Entrepreneur, and you can find that at DIYcareermanifesto.com. I know that's a mouthful, but it's also the title of a new book that I've got out in the Amazon Kindle store. So, like I said, a lot of irons in the fire, and I continue to crank stuff out there just like you, Billy. So we're both doing good work in the world, I like to think.
Well, you are the man. Pause. Do you want to throw out a little freebie or something for the people listening? Or
well, this is specifically music. Yeah, I'm gonna try. Yeah, thanks. I'll just have them go to the Buzz Factor to get the free free download.
So like you say, for all your listeners, blah blah blah. Cool.
Yes.
All right. So you're on.
And since this is a music marketing podcast, I guess I really should encourage anyone to go to thebuzzfactor.com. On the right hand of almost every page, there's a little thing there that says Music Marketing Secrets. And basically, I'm going to give you a whole bunch of free reports. One is called Music Marketing Secrets. It's a whole bunch of different tips and examples and case studies. There's also a separate ebook called How to Recession-Proof Your Music Career, and also 4 ways to attract more music fans faster. And it also comes with a free subscription to my Buzz Factor email newsletter, which I've been publishing since the mid 90s. And so I think it's the longest running music career tips newsletter on the planet, I'm pretty sure. And so yeah, please go and sign up and get those free goodies at thebuzzfactor.com.
Well, thanks for sharing that. That's really great, Bob. Well, I hope we get a chance to do this again. And well, who knows? People might even start hearing us online together soon. We're cooking something up. So
we have something in the works for you.
Yeah, so you can follow me at Music Market Mind, and we can follow you where on Twitter?
I'm Mr. Buzz Factor. MR Buzz Factor is my handle on a lot of social media sites, so that's what I am on Twitter, though.
Great, great. So if anybody wants to follow Bob or I, look for an announcement coming up real soon. I think it'll be interesting. Well, anyway, I'm Billy Gryzak, the Music Marketing Mind. It's time for me to say goodbye. Bob, say bye.
So long, Billy.
Bye-bye now.